So we're going to start with the card slots with a money slot, so somewhere to put your paper money. So I have my paper money slot, I have 2 of the card slots, and I also have my front card slot, and I'm going to use the one that I've got my ID pocket in as well. So I'm just going to take my pocket slot, and I'm going to take one of my card slots, and we're calling this card slot 1, as we do in the pattern, and I'm going to position it 1/2 inch away from the top edge of this pocket, so this money slot. And I generally use a ruler to position it. If you want to measure and mark it, then please do. So I'm going to pop it on there so that it butts up against the ruler. I'm also going to use my ruler on the end here to make sure that my ends are perfectly butted up together. And I'm just going to find a clip. There's never any clips when you want one. I'm just going to clip that in place at the bottom, and I've just moved it, so I need my ruler again. That's it. And I'm going to stitch along the bottom of my card slot using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now you can back stitch at the beginning and the end of this, just a couple of stitches. Clip. So my first card slot is now attached to the front of my pocket. So they're both right sides up. I've got a thread on the back. Now you will have stitching on the back, which will be inside of your money pocket, but you won't see it because it will be inside of your money pocket. Take your second card slot and position that 1/2 inch down from the top edge of the first card slot, and what you'll find is that it should butt up against the bottom of the first one, and it'll butt up to that sort of little cutout part. So let's find my card slots. One will sit right up against the edge of this card slot, so the 2 pieces kind of butt together. It means that you're not going to have extra thickness in this side, but they should just sit right next to each other, so there's no gap. So this end piece and this end piece should sit one on top of the other. So let's just position that again just to be on the safe side. So I've got my card slot on that's 1/2 inch away from the top edge, and I'm just going to make sure that the side bits butt up together as well, so that I know it's straight. I'm going to add a clip, and again I'm going to stitch that in place along the bottom edge using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Back stitch a couple of stitches at the beginning and the end. This is card slot 2 going on. Get rid of all your threads on the front and the back. So now we have card slot 1, card slot 2. Then we're going to take our front card slot panel, and we're going to line that up, and it should sit nicely 1/2 inch down from your first from the second card slot. The top edge, so this edge here, should sit exactly matched up with the top of card slot 1. Line up your sides, make sure that everything's all nice and lined up, and clip that in place. Now we're not actually going to stitch that on just at this moment. We are just clipping it in place. Now I need a small ruler, and I don't appear to have a small ruler here, so I may have to use my big one. I don't appear to have my chalk marker either. Oh, I'm so unprepared. Chalk marker. Right, still can't see I've got the chalk marker, but can't find my small ruler. So I'm going to take that off. Now, at that upright, where you've got the upright between the taller card slot on your front panel and the shorter card slot, 1/8 of an inch in from the side, so 1/8 of an inch from this edge here, you're going to make a line that goes all the way from the top down to the bottom. And if you mark the line, you know that it's going to be absolutely right. So it would have been easier to mark that before I put it onto my other card slots. So there you go. That's the way forwards. Mark it before you put it on. The bottom edge of the front card slot should butt up underneath the second card slot. I might need a longer clip, I think. Why are there never any long clips when I want them? Just to hold them all together. And now I'm going to stitch down the line I've created. So I've added that line, and I'm going to stitch down the line, but I'm going to stitch from the bottom of the card slots upwards. Again, let's just make sure I've got some long threads. I haven't. Long threads, start and finish. Now you are going over a few little bumpy bits of layers here, so you may need to use a hump jumper. For those of you who don't know what a hump jumper is, if your machine is particularly adverse to layers, then this is a hump jumper. It fits underneath the back of your foot to keep your foot level. Hump jumpers help to go over thicker areas, because sometimes when you go from an area where it's quite thin to an area where it's quite thick, your presser foot goes at a peculiar angle to kind of climb that lump, if you like. Well, the hump jumper helps to keep your presser foot level. So it will stop your presser foot going at an angle, and if your presser foot goes at an angle, it will often cause skipped stitches. Now I'm just going to hold the top end of my card slot in place with my awl to make sure that it stays perfectly level with the cards below. I just want to stop my stitching right at the top of that card slot. So I've just moved my fabric slightly so that I can make sure that my stitch ends where I want it to end. And I'm just going to do the same as we've been doing before. And I'm going to take my top thread through to the back at both ends of my card slots. And I'm going to tie them off. Glue those ends down. Get rid of that bit of thread out of the way. The same with this. Got bits of thread everywhere, I keep cutting them off. So end. Let's just make sure my ends are all glued down. And there we are. Right, now you can use a baby wipe or a damp finger. Not sure how easily that's going to come off, because it's actually really textured, this faux leather. So I may need to take a small brush to it to get rid of the chalk marks, but that looks okay. Now, if you find that you've got any areas at the sides where things have moved as you've stitched them, you can trim them off. But we're now going to take our lining panel. Now, remember that your lining panel is higher than it is wider, so make sure that you're going to try and stitch these on the right side. So just put them up onto the thingy. You'll see that they fit one side one way, but they don't fit the other. So you need to go to obviously to the side that they will fit. And you're going to mark a line that is 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. So we're doing our line 1/4 of an inch from the shorter side. We're going to take our card slots that we've just made, and we're going to lay them onto our lining panel. I've got a thread there that doesn't belong, with the top edge of the card slots butted up against that 1/4 inch mark. You can clip it in place, making sure that the sides match perfectly on both sides. It doesn't appear to be quite level there, so let's just move that up, making sure that your cards stay spaced, card slots stay spaced perfectly. And then we're going to stitch along the bottom of the front card slot using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Sorry, an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, my apologies. I'm leaving long threads at the beginning and the end. You can on this one if you want to backstitch, but I prefer not to, because this will be within the fold of the wallet and it will be a pressure point, so backstitching will just weaken that area. Take your threads from the front to the back, and you kind of guess where we're going with this now, can't you? Now, if you wanted to do a money slot on both sides, you can do. I prefer just to have a money slot on one side because I think that's all I need. I don't very often, must be like royalty, I don't actually carry money very often anymore. I think many years of having teenagers at home, so if I had any paper money in my purse, it would vanish with an IOU left in its place, which never ever got returned. I stopped taking money out and I paid for everything with a card because I figured that actually my money was a lot safer that way. Glue the ends down and trim them off. And the same on the other side. And there we are, we have our first lot of card slots attached. Now you can see there that the card slots match up perfectly with the edge of the lining. And you should have that on both sides. If you've been really accurate with your cutting, they should match up on both sides. If they don't, you can always just trim a little bit off if they seem to overlap a little bit. And that may happen if you've got very stretchy faux leather, but you just need to be really careful with it. Okay, so that's our card slots, my first lot of card slots attached, and I'll come back and show you how to do the card slots without the money pocket.